Hey peeps, I'm James Buckle of Engaged Pixel, and I'm from the planet Gurgleflops, where it rains sawdust and the seas are made of earwax. In this episode of my game Postmortem, I'm going to be talking about the second-to-second gameplay of Captain Kaon and how I developed it. When we design gameplay, we break it down into time periods of seconds, minutes and hours. In this video, I'm going to focus on why it's important to get your second-to-second gameplay just right and how to develop it. If you're interested in games and how they are made, then stick around. All gameplay comes down to actions and decisions. It's the player's ability to make decisions and then act upon them to influence what they see in front of them that sets games apart from other entertainment media. We call this interaction gameplay. When we design a game, we break it down into periods of play by hours, minutes and seconds. We ensure the player is doing something engaging that takes them from one time period to the next. They play for the first hour, so what's going to make them keep going for the next hour? They've played this second, so what's going to keep them going to the next? Second to second gameplay is the thing that takes a player from one little moment to the next little moment. Whether it's shooting things or jumping or shooting things or opening doors or shooting things or smashing crates. It forms the core of your game, so it needs to be fun and satisfying. Get it right and your game will be engaging. Players won't be able to put it down. Get it wrong and you will turn the game into a chore. Your players will get frustrated or bored, won't play through your levels and you will lose them. Second to second gameplay can be broken down into decisions, actions and feel. Decisions and actions are easy enough. They're mostly objective and quantifiable. They either exist or they don't, kind of like the beer in my pint glass on a Friday night. It's either there or I've drunk it. Feel, on the other hand, is the tricky one. It's subjective and emotional. It's like asking who's better, Taylor Swift or Beyonce? The answer is neither. It's Raw Republic, they're amazing. The decisions the player makes are based on analysing what's immediately in front of them. Is there an enemy to fight, something to jump over, or a pickup to collect? These give the players choices, things to react to or act upon, and this affects their path through the game. These choices should not be difficult. In your second-to-second gameplay, the player should be making snap impulse decisions, ones that carry simple gains when you do well and small losses when you don't. If you shoot someone and kill them, they're out of your way and you can advance. But if you missed, you've just used a bullet and then you've got to try again. They in turn have the opportunity to shoot you. These gains and losses then stack up and you're either successful and complete the level or you fail and have to try again. Once the player has made a decision, they then have to perform an action based on that choice and in this way interact with your game. It could be run, jump, shoot, duck, whatever actions you have in your game. These small, almost inconsequential actions are easy to forget and you can end up being distracted by the broader picture of your game. The idea of turning left or jumping over something can seem trivial, but it's performing these actions that then advance you to the next moment where you analyse your surroundings again and make another decision. What you have here is a simple loop that is continuously rolling around. You analyse the environment around you, you decide how you want to react to it or act upon it, you perform your action, and then you analyse the environment again to determine what the effects of your action were. In so doing, you have completed the loop and it starts again. Get the player in this loop and you can spin them around until you give them an action that takes them out of it, or until they get really dizzy and sick and throw up everywhere. The speed at which a player goes through this loop determines the pace and intensity of the game. You need to balance the amount of thinking time a decision requires with the amount of time the player has to make it. Too much too fast and they're overwhelmed and stressed. Too little not often enough and they're bored. Think of it like having two dials. The setting of one determines the best setting for the other. In an action game like an FPS, it's quite rapid. You are constantly moving and shooting. These are simple decisions and actions, so you can make them quite rapid. In a stealth game, the rate of decision and action needs to be much slower. The player is analysing the cover and enemy movements around them. They need a little bit more thinking time. It's also a good idea to vary the rate of this loop. Speed the pace up to make the game a little more intense and then slow it back down to let the player relax. If the game is always cranked up to 11, it will wear players out, and if you're always set down near 0, then the players are going to get bored. This is one of the factors that can affect the feel of your game. There's a lot going on when we talk about the feel of a game. At its most basic, being in this loop has to feel good, or rather it has to make you feel. You need to have a visceral response to your game. When we experience excitement, joy, fear, sadness, anguish, pleasure, which can all be triggered by playing a game, then you feel something physically. This can manifest as a knot in your stomach, a bitterness on your tongue, a warm fuzzy glow. When we talk about enjoying games, it's because it's produced an emotional response in us. Different genres have different things that make the game feel right, and you need to decide how you want your player to feel when they play your game. In a beat 'em up or a fighting game, then every punch has to feel satisfying. The weight and impact needs to feel visceral. You need to vicariously feel like you have done damage to your enemy. There needs to be a crunch and they need to fly backwards when you hit them. That way you feel like the big tough hero. Unless of course you don't want the player to feel like Batman. Maybe the character is small and overwhelmed in your game world. Then you need to land your hits a little differently. Maybe you need the player to fly back a lot more when they take hits themselves. To figure this out, you need to figure out what you want the player to feel when they play your game. More than any other part of gameplay, it's the second-to-second moments that deliver game feel the most, and this is at the heart of a successful game. I took inspiration from an old game called Thrust that I had played and enjoyed on my Spectrum. It had simple tilt and thrust mechanic. Tilt your ship in the direction you want it to go, apply thrust to move, shoot anything that gets in your way. The decision of how much thrust to apply and in which direction is informed by whether you're shooting or dodging or just trying to manoeuvre elsewhere. One of the tricky things with the flight is the influence of gravity, and it's also the thing that makes the gameplay stand out from other shooters. Your gunship is constantly falling down, so you always need to give it a little bit of thrust to keep it in place. This means if you leave your gunship alone for too long and take a look around, then you risk crashing. It also means that engaging in combat is a little bit like rubbing your belly and patting your head. This constant need to micromanage the flight can make the game a little taxing, and it doesn't agree with everyone. Some players find it a little frustrating, and I've had to make adjustments during early access to find the right values for gravity and gunship behaviour. This is still a source of worry for a while, but ultimately you can't expect everyone to connect with your game. You just have to hope that enough people do that it's a success. In early playtesting, I found that whilst some people would initially struggle with the flight, most people got it. The thing that really stood out as a problem was the combat. You have to turn your ship to shoot, often sending into a crashing course, which you would then have to immediately rectify. There is some risk and reward at play here. You have to risk crashing your ship for the reward of an opportunity to shoot the bad guy. But this constant need for attention and the fine-tuning of the flight it was too intense and fiddly. Something I learned to do a long time ago is to look down at what your hands are doing, so you're not being distracted by the graphics. If your thumb is constantly hammering the X button all the time, ask yourself why and if it's what you want. In the case of Captain Kaon, I found I was constantly tapping the keys as I switched between attacking and avoiding the scenery. The constant need for input was not what I wanted. I fixed this by making a change to the basic thrust formula. I gave the gunship a turret so it could fire in any direction. Now the combat gameplay is about coming to a hover, making small adjustments to stay there, and then using your ship as a firing platform. This made Captain Kaon less intense to play. It no longer required constant and absolute focus, so it was a lot more accessible. Another problem I had to address was the lack of just miss me moments. Those moments where a rocket whizzes past your nose and you think, phew, that was close. You need to be able to make quick direction changes when you see danger. These kinds of reaction tests are inherent to action games, and they rely on a responsive player avatar. The gunship in Captain Kaon was manoeuvrable and it responded well, but you couldn't change direction quickly. You needed to turn your ship and point it the other way, then apply thrust to first cancel your inertia and slow you down, then move you in the other direction. This gave me a problem in how I balanced the numbers that set the ship's behaviour. To change direction quickly, you needed a rapid turn speed and a strong thrust, but this would make the gunship difficult to control when attempting fine manoeuvres. I added two things to fix this problem. First, I added a strafe impulse that would let you jump to the side. Tap the key and it gives your gunship a short, powerful sideways thrust that has the effect of moving it out of the way of incoming bullets. Now the player could dodge enemy attacks. The second thing added was a little more subtle. In fact, you can't always tell that it's doing it. I realised that I didn't need the ship to have a constant rate of rotation. How quickly it needed to rotate depended on the context of what the player was trying to do. The gunship is most stable when it's pointing upwards, in the 12 o'clock position, or the position of least. When you want to move, you turn away from 12 o'clock, and when you want to stop, you turn back. It's when you're turning back to 12 that you need to turn faster. So I changed the turn speed to be variable based on the facing angle and direction of turn. It will turn quickly towards 12 o'clock and then slowly away from it. I played around with these different settings for the two speeds until I found the best setting, and that had a return speed of about 30% more. The gunship became easier to fly and people crash less often. You're better able to split your focus between flying and shooting. Best of all, at the speed it was set to, it was quite hard to notice what it was doing. Unless you were specifically looking at it, it just gave the player a subtle little bit of help without them knowing that they're getting it. Lastly, there's an important step you need to do to test your gameplay. You need to create a testbed level, a small level that is stripped down to only the things you need to test. I have a bunch of these for different things. Whenever I create something new, I put it into a testbed level first so that I can isolate it from everything else and make sure it works on its own. Testbeds are stripped of all fancy graphics and mostly look like something built in Unity in about 5 minutes. Here are some screenshots of mine. This empty ugliness is deliberate. The level should have the minimum required to run and then the things you are testing and nothing else. I worked on my combat inside one of these levels, my combat testbed level. It has a couple of small areas to move around in and then an endless supply of bad guys to shoot. The trick is to make the combat fun inside a small level like this. If it works here, when you don't have any objectives or distractions, it will work on any other level you put it in. Having a level that contains pure second-to-second gameplay and isn't reliant on level design or objectives or story or graphics or any of the other things to be good is an essential tool of development. So that's how I created the second-to-second gameplay in Captain Kaon. I'll be adding some more videos to this series that discuss the other aspects of gameplay, the minute-to-minute and the hour-to-hour. As long as I keep having ideas and people keep watching them, then I'll keep coming back and making more videos. The next video in this series is going to be about pixel art, why I chose to use this art style and how I did it. Keep an eye out for it next week. If you have any questions, then ask them below and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. If you found this video helpful and interesting, it would be great if you could give it a like. If you have any friends you think might be interested at all, then it would be awesome if you share it with them as well. If you want to support my channel and this video series, then pop over to Steam and pick up a copy of Captain Kaon and you're the best person in the world. Otherwise, enjoy playing games and I'll see you next time. Start recording. Blah, 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 blah. It's subjective and emotional. It's like asking who's better, Taylor Swift or Beyonce. The answer is neither. It's the Raw Republic. They're amazing. It's Raw Republic. There's no the. It's just Raw Republic. Car. Decisions and actions are easy enough. They're mostly objectifiable and objective and quantifiable, you dumbass. Second-to-second gameplay can be broken down into decisions, actions, and there's a fucking car going past. En avant. Or you fail and have to try again. That was pretty good. One more take.